Hello and welcome to a very, very wet and very, very wintry Donington Park for the final TCR UK race meeting of the season. We are going to have our champion decided this weekend with Dan Lloyd leading by 31 points. Now, he could have won it last time out at Croft, but his DNF coupled with Ollie Taylor's race win means there's all to play for. Here's what happened yesterday during qualifying.
With blustery conditions and the threat of rain a real possibility, the drivers were keen to get on track as soon as possible for the final qualifying session of the year. Croft winner Andreas Bäckman set the early pace in his West Coast Racing VW Golf. And championship hopeful Ollie Taylor got straight down to business in his Pyro Motorsport Honda Civic. But it wasn't long before points leader Dan Lloyd lit up the timing screens in his West Coast Racing Golf, quickest by some distance. And life was about to get even more difficult for Taylor as Jess Bäckman broke into the top three, pushing Ollie down to fourth place. Meanwhile, the next four cars were covered by less than 0.2 of a second, with Stewart Lines ultimately claiming fifth spot in the Maximum Motorsport prepared Cupra. Darrell Wilson was just 97 thousandths of a second adrift and completed the top six. With few improvements to times in the final 10 minutes of the session, it was a West Coast Racing 1-2-3, with Dan Lloyd taking pole position here at Donington by 0.3 of a second.
Perfect start to the weekend. It's what we planned on doing. We didn't want to play any games this weekend with a reverse grid. We just wanted to do maximum attack, go for pole, go for the maximum points and see where we ended up. And West Coast Racing had done an unbelievable job. So yeah, great start to the weekend.
Second quickest on his first ever visit to Donington Park was the impressive Andreas Bäckman.
I had to push a lot through the qualifying to get my lap time, and it was also very close also with Jessica and Dan, so I wanted to do my best laps I could, but I'm really pleased with qualifying. Second place and had a team in 1-2-3 was really funny.
But a frustrating session for Ollie Taylor puts him fourth on the grid for race one, 3 places behind his title rival.
Just didn't really have an answer for Dan and Andreas and Jessica. Obviously, the balance of performance for this weekend, they're running considerably lighter. I think they're about 60 kilos lighter than I was. And just looking at the pace against the other Hondas, didn't do too badly there. I'm not disappointed with that, but fourth obviously is a bit of a shame to get that result. There's obviously some points given away there, and this weekend we want to capture as many points as we can. But yeah, ultimately I'm happy with my performance, and I think that was the best we were going to do, really.
With Lloyd scoring 11 points for pole and Taylor 7 for qualifying fourth, it means that Lloyd will go into the first race of the weekend with a 35-point lead in the championship. With just 80 points still available over the 2 races, Taylor has work to do if he's to take the championship down to the wire.
So there we have it, Dan Lloyd starting on pole position, and a stat for you, every time we've had a pole sitter from the qualifying session, they've gone on to win the race here in TCR UK, the first race of a race weekend. If Dan Lloyd keeps that stat alive, he'll be the champion at the end of the first race. Ollie Taylor has to finish ahead of Dan to keep his title hopes alive. So over to our race commentator for all the action.
This is going to be very, very tense indeed. For Dan and Ollie, this championship battle is very much still alive. Essentially, if they're inside the top 4, Dan only needs to beat Ollie by 1 position on the track, and he will be champion. If they're outside of the top 4, then it's a bit different. Actually, Ollie can then afford to finish just behind Dan, and mathematically it would still be alive. Darrell Wilson's Vauxhall Astra has not left the line and appears to be in the process of being pushed into the pit lane. I think, yes, they've opened the gap in the wall on the pit lane, so he will not be taking any part in this one, it would appear. Right, here is confirmation of the grid then. West Coast Racing 1-2-3 with championship leader Dan Lloyd on pole position. Andreas Bäckman is second alongside him with Jessica Bäckman on row 2 and Ollie Taylor for company. Stewart Lines is 5th, had a really good qualifying session, a great battle with Stewart, Darrell, who unfortunately will not be there in the Astra, Finley Crocker as well. They were all very close together for 5th. Then you've got Carl Swift, Lewis Kent is on the 5th row of the grid. Welcome back to Josh Price as well, who makes a welcome return to the championship, having last been out at Brands Hatch. And likewise, Sean Walkinshaw, who we saw in the SWR car back at Knock Hill earlier on in the season, the very same car in which Andreas Bäckman won a race at Croft. The red lights go on, they go out now. And it's a good start made by Dan Lloyd from pole position. Jessica Bäckman is slow away though, so Ollie Taylor I think may well have picked off one of the Golfs already. No, still wheel to wheel down towards Redgate corner for the first time, but he does go ahead under braking, so it's Lloyd from Andreas Bäckman. Taylor up a position already to third and gets sideways. Ollie Taylor sideways at the first corner. Off onto the grass he goes. Carl Swift is off as well. Oh, Ollie Taylor just as he was making progress. That is how slippery it is though. He turned into Redgate corner and the rear of the car came straight around. So Ollie Taylor rejoins undamaged, but a long way down the order. It's Lloyd that leads the way. It's Andreas Bäckman second. It's Jessica Bäckman third and sideways. And look at Josh Price. Josh Price onto the podium now as Jessica Bäckman is on the grass as well. She'll start dropping down the order, but Josh Price from 10th on the grid is running third halfway around the opening lap. Phenomenal start from Josh Price in his third appearance in that car this year, and he's not necessarily felt that it's been the most competitive car out there at points this season, but the wet is a great leveller and he's out there just to try and get as good a result as he can. He's into third place now. Finley Crocker is fourth, Lewis Kent is fifth and sideways with Stewart Lines up the inside, and then Jessica Bäckman and Ollie Taylor together, so they're some way down the order. So too Carl Swift. These are all the drivers that had dramas on the opening half a lap or so. Well, I did say this was going to be a dramatic 15 minutes of racing, and it's proving to be so already, but Dan Lloyd has done the job that he needed to off the line. He is leading the way. Andreas Bäckman is in second place. Ollie Taylor up the inside of Jessica, I noticed there, and I think had managed to pick that place off, but really now his job is looking almost impossible, isn't it? Can he possibly get back to the front of the field to challenge Dan Lloyd? He comes across the line, Ollie Taylor in sixth position. That damage on Jessica Beckman's car getting worse, unfortunately, now, and in a way, it will be better for her if that bit of bodywork were to fly off completely, because if it stays loose like that, it will attract the attention of the clerk of the course. The lead gap for Dan Lloyd, 1.4 seconds over Andreas Bäckman in second, and Josh Price starting to breathe down his neck slightly. Then it's Crocker fourth, then it's Lyons fifth, and look at Ollie Taylor. The attitude of that car tells you that he is on a mission to try and regain that lost ground. It's going to be a tough ask, but Dan Lloyd still has to try and survive the conditions out in front. He still has to make sure that he doesn't put a foot wrong. It's very easy just to catch a bit of standing water, catch a painted white line or a curb, which is like ice in the wet, and the next thing you know, you're off the track and traipsing through the gravel, as Ollie Taylor was at the very first corner. The next man on Ollie Taylor's hit list is Stewart Lines, which I'm sure he's thrilled to see, because Stewart is not the easiest of people to overtake. He is a very strong defensive driver, and he'll make that Cupra as wide as he possibly can. Andreas Bäckman is making his Golf pretty wide as well, because still Josh Price, who had that scintillating run up the order on the opening lap, has now come unstuck. He can't find a way past the young Swedish driver. In the background, meanwhile, I noticed that Ollie Taylor has gone past Stewart Lines. So Taylor is now fifth, but to reiterate, that is still nowhere near enough to keep the championship alive going into the final race. Realistically, it looks as though he's going to have to hope that something happens to Dan Lloyd here, because Dan is now 5.4 seconds clear of this battle for second position. If he can get on the podium, it would actually be a terrific fight back for Ollie Taylor, regardless of what the championship situation is. Josh Price has found a gap finally up the inside of Andreas Bäckman. He goes into second place, and he will make that one stick. So Price is now released into second position, but he's over 6 seconds down the road from the race leader. He'd be hard pushed, surely, to catch Dan Lloyd. He's certainly going to give it a go, though. Ollie Taylor, meanwhile, is running fifth. He took about half a second that time out of Finley Crocker, so he's not making enormous inroads into the similar FK8 Civic Type R as it runs through McLean's, but you can see that he is definitely getting a bit closer now to the Verizon Connect racing car. Finley Crocker with his headlights ablaze, as indeed is mandatory for all of the cars. Down the exhibition straight they go, and through the middle sector, Josh Price is about 6/10 slower than Dan Lloyd, so it doesn't look as though Josh has quite got the pace to go after the race leader. There is the race leader, and champion-elect, maybe we can start calling Dan Lloyd now, because with less than half the race to go, he's looking very good here. Josh Price pulling off to the side of the road with problems. Josh Price has got a problem. The Civic pulling off to the side. I thought at first that he was looking for the wetter side of the road to try and cool the tyres down. Oh, that's a real shame for Josh Price, who had been the man of the moment, really, hadn't he? Working his way through into second position from 10th on the grid, and unfortunately, mechanical woes sidelining him. He may have had to wait a little longer than many people predicted that he would have to wait to win the championship, but provisionally a race win in the penultimate round of the championship in 2018 means that Dan is your first ever champion. Congratulations, West Coast Racing, who had already been confirmed as the team's champions as well. And Dan Lloyd finally can relax and can celebrate. A West Coast Racing won 2 as well, with Andreas Bäckman hanging on to that second place by, in the end, actually 3/4 of a second. It was a fairly healthy margin that he held over Crocker in 3rd, and Ollie Taylor 4th, Stewart Lines is 5th, Jessica Bäckman 6th, Lewis Kent 7th, Carl Swift in 8th, and Sean Walkinshaw will come home in 9th, the last of the finishers.
Over the moon, we got off to such a great start, and then through a few reasons of carrying a lot of weight, ballast and penalty points and a failure at Croft, you know, it started going the other way. You know, just did everything I could and make sure I put everything into it, and the team have been faultless, you know, the West Coast Racing team, I owe it all to them. You know, I wouldn't have had this opportunity if it wasn't for the team giving me it. It was only supposed to be a one-race deal, and we went from there to build on from that. So I owe everything to James Nixon and Dick Johnson. They've done a mega job.
The title done and dusted, Dan Lloyd taking it in race 1. So this race is just for fun, except as we know, all of those drivers want to end the season on a high. So over for the final time of the season to our race commentator.
Well, here's confirmation of the grid then. This is the grid formed by taking the second fastest lap times from qualifying and flipping the top 10. So the driver with the 10th fastest, second fastest time, if you see what I mean, was Carl Swift. So he gets the pole position with Josh Price alongside him. Then it's Lewis Kent and Finley Crocker, row 2. Stewart Lines and Darrell Wilson on the 3rd row, with Ollie Taylor and Jessica Bäckman on row 4. Then it's Andreas Bäckman, Dan Lloyd starting 10th on the grid, with Sean Walkinshaw 11th. We do not appear to have Darrell Wilson, though. So Darrell Wilson, who broke a drive shaft at the start of the green flag lap, in fact, of race 1, doesn't look as though the Astra is going to be out there for this race. TCR UK is about to blast into life. The red lights go on. They go out now. Good start made by the looks of it by Josh Price from the outside of row number 1. He's going to try and draw level with Carl Swift on the run down towards Redgate, which he does. But Carl Swift has the inside line. Which one will prevail? I think the grip should be with Josh on the outside. There's no grip for Lewis Kent, though. He's in the gravel, and I thought we might see someone off wide at the first corner. What a shame that it's Lewis Kent, who really will have felt that he had a chance of a 3rd podium result in this race. So Price leads the way. Swift is 2nd, Lines is 3rd, Crocker 4th, and Ollie Taylor 5th, with Andreas Bäckman there in 6th. Then it's Dan Lloyd 7th, Jessica Bäckman 8th, Sean Walkinshaw 9th, and Lewis Kent 10th. There's sideways there for Carl Swift through the old hairpin. Did he manage to gather that one together? Let's wait and see as they come out of the turn. There is Lewis Kent. He has rejoined at the back and has some real work to do now. Swift is still there in 2nd place, but there may be no catching this man. Josh Price, we saw, had really good pace in race number 1 before he had that fuel pressure issue. Stewart Lines wipes out the plastic markers up at McLean's, and we see a familiar sight here. Dan Lloyd has caught Ollie Taylor, and the 2 championship protagonists throughout the season are back together again, and Dan's going to try and go right around the outside of Ollie, who gets a bit sideways at the apex of McLean's. Now, it almost looked as though he was going to clatter into the side of Dan's car. Yes, he did. Dan Lloyd's been off, look. So Dan Lloyd, I don't think that was intentional for Ollie. That's just how slippery it is at that part of the circuit, and I think there may have been contact. We'll wait for confirmation on that if we get it. I can't see any obvious damage on Ollie Taylor's car, in fairness, but it did look as though his car was starting to slide out wide. Andreas Bäckman has taken full advantage of that to get past the pair of them, but Dan Lloyd, what fortune it is that he wrapped up the title with a race to spare, because race number 2 has not started in great fashion. Josh Price's race, though, has. He leads the way by 2.2 seconds over Carl Swift in 2nd. Ollie Taylor almost recreating his slide from the start of race number 1 there, as he almost loses the rear of the car through Redgate corner. It's Price from Swift from Lines, the top 3. Finley Crocker 4th, and appears to be under pressure here from Andreas Bäckman, who will be looking to try and repeat the performance that he had in the previous race where he beat Finley Crocker. Finley, of course, was desperately trying to find a way past him on that occasion. This time around, though, the roles have been reversed. Ollie Taylor tried to come back at them as well after that little skirmish up at Coppice last time through. But the 2 Coopers look 2nd and 3rd position. Now, they did say to me yesterday, did Stewart Lines and Carl Swift, that they really felt they had a good wet weather setup, and we're starting to see that now. Ollie Taylor, though, drives right around the outside of Andreas Bäckman and potentially Finley Crocker. That is how much more grip there is on the outside line. And Ollie Taylor, oh no, contact! No, Finley Crocker and Ollie Taylor into each other. Taylor off into the gravel, what a shame. Ollie should be able to rejoin, but oh dear, there'll be conversations about that later on, because whilst Finley runs under the Verizon Connect banner, they are are both run out of the Pyro stable, so that will be an interesting and rather awkward conversation, I think, post-race. But that was exactly what happened to Ollie a lap ago. The driver on the inside line at Coppice just has no grip and slithers out wide. And if there's someone trying to go around the outside, which is the place to go if you're trying to make an overtake in these conditions, then sometimes the two of you just meet in the middle. Right, Jessica Bäckman goes to the outside of Finley Crocker. Dan Lloyd goes to the inside. This can't work, surely. Three abreast in towards Redgate Corner. They're going to squeeze, and Dan Lloyd backs out of it. There's contact between Crocker and Bäckman, who saves it. Nice save there from Jessica. But Finley back up the inside line. This is the kind of racing we really wanted to see, though, from the final round of the championship. It's gloves off now. No points to worry about particularly. There are one or two positions up for grabs throughout the order, but unlikely to change. So let's just go out and have some fun, and that's exactly what they're doing. Dan Lloyd's struggling to work his way through here. He's trying to do it as cleanly as possible, though, because in theory, if he were to have contact with somebody in this race, he could be given championship points deduction, which has happened to him earlier on this season. He's alongside Finley Crocker almost as they go up the hill, but Jessica Bäckman, the cork in the bottle here. Crocker, Lloyd, Kent now in there as well. Oh, contact between Lloyd and Kent. Dan Lloyd again, a really nice save, and that opens the door for Ollie Taylor to maybe take advantage. In fact, Dan Lloyd trying to fight back, I think, as they go up the hill towards Coppice Corner. He's on the inside this time of Ollie Taylor, who just about finds the grip on the outside. He'll carry more speed down the exhibition straight, may be able to get himself ahead of his great rival on the run to the chicane. No, he can't actually. The Golf stays in front, but Lewis Kent there definitely joining in the fun there. Got up the inside of Dan Lloyd, gave him a fair whack, but these cars are built strong, and Dan Lloyd managed to survive, it would appear, unscathed. Deep breath, everyone. Back out of Hollywood they go. Jessica Bäckman there running in 5th place, with Crocker 6th, then Kent 7th. Lloyd 8th and Taylor 9th. That's not what I expected to be saying 5 minutes into the race. I really thought they'd have made more progress than this, but they've both had skirmishes. So too has Lewis Kent, and of course Lewis and Dan a lap ago, but the next corner McLean's made contact. Well, this time around Dan gets himself the inside line. He's going to try and move through here into 7th place if he can, and indeed he does. The next question is, can Ollie Taylor follow him through? No, he wasn't quite close enough to take advantage of that. What about the exit speeds? No, I think Lewis Kent should hang on. You can see the plastic marker post there that was kicked up by Stewart Lines on the opening lap, still lying in the middle of the road as this midfield squabble makes its way up to the top of the hill. Dan Lloyd now trying to set his sights on the cars in front, but it's not going to be easy for him to make any further progress because Finley Crocker is next, and we know that he's a tough man to overtake. There is the leader, Josh Price, across the start-finish line. New fastest lap last time around was a 1 minute 21.256. That compares to the fastest lap in the previous race, 1:21.4. So actually, only a couple of tenths quicker despite the much improved conditions. That's just because it is so greasy. Although it's less wet, it's still very slippery indeed. Then it's Swift second, Lines third. Gap came down slightly between those two that time around. And then Andreas Bäckman fourth. And then this almighty train of cars trying to be fifth. Jessica Bäckman is fifth at the moment. Finley Crocker is sixth and on the defence here because Dan Lloyd is trying to get alongside him as they run through Hollywood. He is alongside him as they go through Hollywood. He's got the inside line for the left-hander at the Craner Curves, and Dan Lloyd is now starting to make Dan Lloyd-esque progress up the field. We very nearly have 6 cars together here. Carl Swift is doing his best to try and keep everyone behind, but Stewart Lines has had a second wind here in the second half of this race, and he tries to get up the inside of his teammates as they come out of Coppice Corner. I think Stewart is a bit quicker at this stage of the race too, so he'll want to get on with this and try and escape because West Coast Racing are coming. Andreas Bäckman, Dan Lloyd and Jessica Bäckman all together there, and Ollie Taylor for good measure. So this is a cracking way to end the season. Carl Swift again for the second lap in succession is sideways into the chicane, and this time around through goes Stewart Lines. I think Carl Swift let him go there, so Stewart Lines goes into second place. Stewart Lines is looking for his first podium of the season. Carl looking for his second. Well, they're both on the podium at the moment, but for how much longer? Because now Andreas Bäckman moves to attack Carl Swift as they go through Redgate Corner. Wide line in, he goes right round the outside. Fantastic for Andreas Bäckman. He goes through. Dan Lloyd's going to try and follow him, and unfortunately for Carl Swift, his time at the front of the field is now starting to draw to a close, I think, because through have gone 2 of the West Coast Racing cars. The third of them, Jessica Bäckman, had an almighty slide then through the Craner Curves. Andreas, her brother, is sideways through the Old Hairpin as well. They're all really struggling with these greasy conditions here. Can Stewart Lines hang on for his first podium finish of the year? He's second at the moment, but he's got 2 very quick West Coast Racing Golfs closing in. Lloyd and Andreas Bäckman have caught him now, so the Maximum Motorsport prepared Cupra is coming under all sorts of pressure. Up the hill they go. Stewart Lines, though, a feisty racer, and with a first possible podium of the season on the cards, he is going to get his elbows out here for sure, because you have to imagine that if one of these two come through, then probably they both will. Down the straight, there you go, down the pit straight comes Josh Price. You can see there the lead that he's got over the cars behind him, and that lead is only going to extend as Stewart Lines continues to defend now. Through the chicane, they come for the penultimate time. He's sideways this time, he's off the track, and Andreas Bäckman was over the curbs as well. So where's Dan Lloyd? He gets the best run of all of them out of the chicane, draws himself alongside, wheel to wheel for third place, and Dan Lloyd's got his nose ahead at the line to the tune of 65 thousandths of a second, but Andreas Bäckman is not backing down. He goes back up the inside at Redgate Corner. Can he pull over and block Dan? No, he can't. Dan's got the traction on the exit, and I think goes through. Yes, he does. Dan Lloyd goes into third place and has one more lap to try and find a way past Stewart Lines. Well, this is a fight you'd buy a ticket for, isn't it? Dan Lloyd, the champion-elect, versus Stewart Lines. Well, whenever Stewart Lines is mentioned in a battle on track, you know there's going to be fireworks, and he will not respect Dan Lloyd's champion status, though, that's for sure. He will be wanting to get one over on the newly crowned TCR UK Champion, and what better way to do it than to hold on for second place on the final lap of the season. Up the hill they go, through McLean's. Lloyd again looking for the grippier line on the outside. Actually didn't seem to make a huge gain through there on the Cooper in front of him. Josh Price, though, well, his car has survived the race, and he's going to take a very convincing victory. He will become the 5th different winner this season across the start-finish line. Well, actually, there's 1 second left on the clock now. The checkered flag does go out at the last second, and Josh Price takes the race victory in the final round of the 2018 championship. What's going on for second place, though? That's the big question. They're about to come out of the chicane, and is it going to be Lines? Is it going to be Lloyd? It's going to be Stewart Lines, who will get his first podium of the season, and it's a second place. He fends off Dan Lloyd, who at least rounds out the season with a podium. Andreas Bäckman comes home in 4th place. Jessica is 5th. Then it's Ollie Taylor in 6th. Finley Crocker was 7th. Carl Swift dropped to 8th in the end. Maybe the tyres were going away towards the end of the race. And Lewis Kent, unfortunately, never really recovered from that first corner off. These are the final championship points. Dan Lloyd is now confirmed as the champion. Oliver Taylor in 2nd place. Andreas Bäckman 3rd, and Jessica Bäckman does indeed hang on to that 4th place in the points, ahead of Lewis Kent in 5th. Stewart Lines is 6th, ahead of Finley Crocker, with Carl Swift 8th. Well, for the final time this year then, let's head down into the pit lane and get all of the reaction from what was a cracking race with Brim.
The 3rd and the 2nd at Knockhill, and you've gone top spot.
Yeah, it was a good race. Halfway through I saw the gap and I just started short shifting cruising, just hoping that it weren't going to break down. Luckily it didn't, so hats off to all the team.
Well, that was the tricky thing with the car. I mean, the car could have been behaving perfectly until at any moment it could have just decided to stop again.
Yeah, we had a fuel pressure issue that we had at Brands as well, and it played up in the race before. But because of the repair time, we didn't have any chance to change anything. So we just brimmed it as much as we could, and it held out. So I'll say thanks to all Team Pyro, all the guys on this car. They've done a really good job.
Well, that's it then from Donington Park and the final TCR UK race of the season. And what a season it's been. Plenty of ups, plenty of lows, but a very, very worthwhile champion. Dan Lloyd taking 8 of the 14 races and becoming the first TCR UK champion, the first of many. We've had a fantastic year. Thanks for joining us.